a billing system will cost you $1,000 a month or whatever for a mid-sized company. But that same company will spend $100,000 a month on professional services from PwC, KPMG, and EY. And we're saying that with deploying assembly, you will be able to actually go out and build a use case that actually tackles the same work that a PwC would do in audit or financial advisory or actuarial reserving. So as opposed to displacing that SaaS provider, we're saying this should be replacing the external consultants that come in to help you with those tasks.
Our question was, okay, well, as a business that does AI enablement for our clients, where is that competitive edge going to come in? Right? We sort of saw a pattern emerge that stitching together context across the business would always yield a lot more value.
So what? What is the point? How do I actually apply this to my business? We are here at the assembly line, season 1, episode 2. Episode 2. And today we're doing something quite special. We're debuting the flagship product of the company, which we call Assembly, Pygio Assembly. It's a framework, it's a product set. We'll get into it in a bit. But before we do that, I just want to say how's it to Nic, who's with us, joining us remotely in Dubai. Nic, how are you doing?
Good news, Dimitri. What's happening?
Good, thanks. So we're on a formal basis, so on a formal naming basis.
Got to keep it formal for the podcast. I'm even wearing a shirt for you guys. I'm wearing a shirt and I'm popped my collar as well.
I know everyone thinks Dubai is hot, but
it's been raining. It's been raining this week.
So maybe let's actually take a minute to just check in. How is the situation in Dubai? How's it been with obviously since the last time we posted about 4 weeks ago, the first episode. Right after that, there was a war that started. Maybe you can tell us a bit about what it's like on the ground there, what's happening with the everyday man, tourists, expats. What is the feeling?
Yeah, I mean, what a question. I think obviously it hasn't been the easiest time. That initial week there was a lot of uncertainty. A lot of people didn't really know what was going on. I think there's almost two camps, which is absolute panic on the one side and absolute business as usual on the other side. I think probably the reasonable approach is to sort of find a middle ground between those two viewpoints. But I mean, the response by the government has been absolutely incredible. I mean, just the defense force, the police force, business continuity, everything's open, airports are open, flights are still flying, restaurants are going. I mean, I was out last weekend, it was packed. Obviously, there are certain things that are quite different. You get some alerts on your phone every once in a while. But yeah, I mean, overall, I mean, it's been it's been somewhat emotional. Obviously, with all of the I suppose businesses that have been put at risk, and a lot of our customers are quite focused on business continuity, pretty much just keeping the doors open. I think you must also remember that 27% of Dubai's economy depends on tourism, right? So it's a very, very big chunk. It's a sizable chunk of the GDP of the UAE, but Dubai specifically. So obviously tourism has almost come to, I wouldn't say a complete halt, but I mean, obviously people are not coming into the region. There's always a silver lining. I mean, there's a lot of discounts and free hotel stays and all that kind of stuff, but obviously in the grander scheme of things, it's definitely not a benefit that you sort of weigh up. But yeah, I mean, and even just from our customers, it's like it's been amazing seeing how they've come to the party for their employees, signing like promissory notes, doing all they can, basically trying to keep everyone on payroll, ensure that benefits and bonuses carry on going. Definitely the perspective is that this will blow over. Obviously the UAE in general is broadly, I mean, it's very neutral. So they're not looking to escalate. And yeah, I mean, there'll be 3-4 months of uncertainty, probably turbulent times, but overall, I think it'll blow over quite soon, and we're hopeful it'll blow over quite soon.
It's an interesting dynamic because the UAE is, as a nation state, is like a social experiment. You've got 90% or 90% of the population being expats, and if the EU or a country in the EU, for example, Greece, goes to war, the Greeks are not leaving their country. But in a country where 90% of the people have another home to go to, it can cause like a run on the bank style situation where everyone kind of leaves the country. So I think the UAE government, from what I've seen from afar, has done a phenomenal job of making sure everyone feels safe. And I think if you're, from the feedback we get from partners and clients, I think if you're if you're there to stay, you embed your roots. It is much more difficult and challenging for people with families and kids. I think obviously very traumatic for children, but I mean, we're here to stay. We're here to build.
Absolutely. I mean, our perspective is when everyone's uncertain, you run headfirst into whatever the uncertainty is. You run into the storm. So our perspective has been sort of how do we help our customers through whatever we're good at doing, if it's technology, automation, helping them ensure business continuity, and pretty much just keep the lights on, which I think everyone's doing a pretty good job at keeping them on. So yeah, it's been amazing. The response has been outstanding.
All right. Well, I think let's segue into what we're here to discuss today. We have done a lot of speaking about assembly online. We've started to POC, pilot this with our marquee clients over the last couple of months. We've been thinking, introspecting about what's happening in the world of AI. What do we build today that will be relevant in the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years? And it's such a tricky thing because it's a moving target. Every single week, there's a new model that comes out that blows away previous benchmarks. With that in mind, knowing that the models are only going to ever be as bad as they are today, we have to build for that future and understand how to guide our clients. Maybe we can start off with what is assembly and define, I think, what is the problem statement that we're seeing when companies, last week or last episode, we spoke about the GenAI Divide and how companies are tactically and not strategically using AI to their advantage. What is our solution? What is the build that we've created to answer that question? How are we helping companies, and what is the flagship and North Star metric of our kind of company? So Nick, I know producer Tom in the background has a question for you.
I'm gonna grab a mic, hopefully it's working. My question is to both of you, but it sounds like Nick's going to be the one who's going to answer it. But where did assembly come from? Where did the idea come from? What was the aha moment for you? I don't know if Nic can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you. No, I got the question. It's a good question. I mean, I don't think there was any one single moment where it was like, aha, that this is like assembly and what the product is, or at least the vision is today, sort of just appeared at once. I think we've since our journey, in the data science practice at Pygio, we do a lot of different things for customers, broadly, anything around machine learning, analytics, agentic AI implementation for our customers. So it's enabling our customers with different kinds of capabilities within different domains. But we sort of saw a pattern emerge that stitching together context across the business would always yield a lot more value. So I think as a general vision and a North Star, across most of the data and AI projects that we do and most of the clients that we've got, all of their projects, even though they start off with a very specific use case in a particular domain in the business, the vision is ultimately to unify as much of their business the business fabric, so to speak, into a single environment, into a single context layer that we can then obviously leverage, right? So, we always like to say that we're a business that integrates many disparate data sources together, and generally what happens is you'll actually find value across the seams of stitching these systems together. So we typically actually go into customers and we say, in a discovery session, we'll connect all of these different data sources and we'll tell you something new about your business that you previously had never known, right? And so from a vision standpoint,
within the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, super quick. And obviously we've built out a lot of IP and accelerators, and it's our secret sauce around how we do that. From a technology standpoint, I mean, obviously it's been guided a lot by what we've seen in customer environments and the learnings that we've had over the last 2 years, doing big data implementations, unifying context across the business, from your ERP, CRM, billing engines, accounting systems, HR systems. What we've tried to do, though, I think over the last sort of 6 to 8 months, is productize, actually develop a lot of what the vision is into actual software, and actually a hard product or platform, right? So assembly is both a vision as well as progressing towards a product. And I mean, I can get into that in a bit, but I would say that there hasn't been a single moment. It's been a progressive idea that we've been developing over the last 2 years.
And Nic, in your what is a one-liner for assembly? What is the catchphrase? What does it do?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great one. I'd say the one-liner is assembly is a unified context layer for your business, right? It's your digital brain that unifies all of the facts. So current state of the business, how we got there, and very importantly, why we got to where we are today. So not only talking about the what has happened in the business, but the why is sort of the add-on. That's probably a bit more than a one-liner, but you can take from it what you will.
And give me an example of what is the what, so the facts in the business, and the why, and where those things live and sit, and how they feed ultimately into assembly.
Typically with a lot of the work that we do, we integrate into what's called systems of record, right? So that's these legacy databases. I wouldn't say legacy databases, but from an enterprise perspective, certainly you can get Oracle, SAP, ServiceNow, whatever your ERP system is. These are typically systems that tell you the hard facts of what exists currently and what the state is of your business at the moment. So I can tell you what exists in my warehouse, as an example, from an ERP standpoint. What we've often though realized is when it comes to automation, and especially when you want to try and replicate a lot of human reasoning and thought, you often are missing the why behind why a lot of those decisions are made. So what we've tried to do is, as I've said before, across all of these different systems of record, you've got human beings who sit in swivel chair, and I think we spoke about this last week. There's a lot of tribal knowledge that sits in these people's minds. So what we've tried to do is basically try and capture a lot of that information through different data sources like meeting transcripts, Teams conversations, Slack messages, but then bring it into that central sort of unified context layer, which connects to the what has happened. So you've got a clear picture of where we are currently, how we've gotten there, and then also why we got there.
And let me ask you, why doesn't a traditional database just do this? So any database, on-prem, in the cloud, OLAP, OLTP, why do they not do this already? Why is this necessary? And why, I think what probably most people ask us is, can your LLM not, or when you plug in a foundation model into your database, given that you've got a semantic layer already, why do you need a context graph? And we haven't even gone into context graphs yet, but why is it needed?
I'll take a couple steps back. I mean, we've got a view as to sort of where things are going, or at least if you do take a view to where things are going in the world, right? So LLMs, the ChatGPT moment happened in 22. I think that really like wowed the world, shocked the world, whichever verb you want to use. But if you project out LLM capabilities over the next 5 to 10 years, we are broaching on what a lot of people would probably call super intelligence, or basically highly capable models that will become more and more intelligent, right? So in a world where that's the case, and also it's the case where the model layer is completely commoditized. Now, what does that mean? It means that a startup that's basically just been founded in Sea Point, Cape Town, or Tembisa, Johannesburg, has got the access to the exact same models as what Microsoft does in the US as a Fortune 100 company, right? So there's a commoditization and a sort of a leveling of the playing field at the intelligence layer. Our question was, okay, well, as a business that does AI enablement for our clients, where is that competitive edge going to come in, right? And I mean, if anyone takes a step back, and certainly for the knowledge workers that are listening to this podcast right now, and certainly for me, I mean, if I just take myself as an example, I'd probably say that like at least 30 minutes to 45 to an hour and a half of my day is spent prompting, right? And a lot of people call that different things. Initially, it was prompt engineering. There's now, context engineering. There's a new kind of harness engineering, which is we can get into what that sort of means. But giving these LLMs as much context as possible and as good context and as high quality context as possible is really the differentiator. And we're actually seeing it. I mean, we've had training programs for our internal staff as to how to use these tools and how to actually prompt and give it correct context. I mean, we're on G Suite, so it's amazing. We basically just connect to Gemini, and it's got access to our entire Google Drive. So in a world where the model layer is completely commoditized and context is really what matters, what you want to do is you want to be able to give as much context as possible to your AI within the business in as easy a format as possible, as quickly as possible. And I think that that's what we've tried to solve for, is at any given point, with a single query and without a human being having to manually prompt it, can an LLM or an agent get context into every single corner of the business for the specific task that it's been asked to deliver, right, within the query. And that will effectively augment the human request coming in or the query coming in, or whatever the workflow outcome required is. So I think that's the general thesis of what we've tried to do with Assembly. Assembly is, as we've said, it's a broad vision, but I mean, it's being productized very nicely. And as I've said, it unifies your structured data, unstructured data, as well as I call it like your kinetic data streams within the business. So communication channels, meeting transcripts, Slack conversations, all of the different data sources that you would otherwise think are not important actually start to become very important in a world of highly capable models. So
maybe we can just dig a little bit deeper under the hood. So we've spoken about context graphs. We use ontologies to build. Assembly uses ontologies to build these out. Maybe we can, dig a little deeper, layer deeper, and explain how we build this out per industry, how we apply assembly per industry. What is an ontology? I think a lot of people across different domains, whether you're in a telco or a bank or an insurer, are playing around with these concepts of ontologies. We see it every single day. But how have we used that concept and the underlying technology being graphs? Which are some of the graph providers do we lean on? Maybe you can just unpack a little bit more how you've gone about and the team's gone about actually building this.
It's probably worth taking a step back and looking at the traditional sense of what a data engineer does, which is a part of it is, amongst many things, is data modeling, which is once you've sort of understood a domain and the workflows and all of the concepts that fit within that domain, typically coming from your system of record, they'll do a principle, like an activity called data modeling, right? So data modeling basically specifies all of the different data points that exist within that domain, and typically they will unify that into some kind of logical structure that makes sense. Now, there's a couple different types. There's, your medallion architecture is obviously a very common one that we use, but that's a very tried and tested way of basically saying how do you unify context across the business. Now, what an ontology does, and sorry, for traditional data modeling, that will typically be for structured data sources. So for your traditional systems of record, if it's a CRM, ERP, billing engine, HRSD system, you'll want to take all of that data and you'll want to effectively unify it into a single model, right? That you can understand how all these things relate to each other. How does a customer place an order, and how is that order then reconciled to a specific account, and that account is then reconciled to an account manager. That's a problem that's obviously been quite well solved with traditional data modeling. On the question of ontologies, I mean, ontologies go by, and I think there's probably a lot of shrouded knowledge around ontologies. I don't think a lot of people fully I think a lot of people haven't really done massive amounts of homework on ontologies, but the way that I would define an ontology is effectively a business map. So very similarly to how you would map all of the data points and the interaction points and the entities that would exist in a particular domain from a traditional data modeling perspective, an ontology tries to do the same thing, but in a bit more of a flexible way. What it explicitly does is it maps the nouns and the verbs of a business, right? So it doesn't just connect and link specific entities across different systems, but what it does is it actually specifies what the relationship is, and what that does is it also enables providing sort of a substrate for action, right? And I can get sort of what that means, right? So instead of just saying Nicholas order and there's a relational link from a foreign key, primary key perspective, an ontology will actually specify the kind of action that exists. So it'll be Nicholas places an order. So why ontologies are quite interesting is because basically under the hood and inherently within the data model, so to speak, you've actually got a system of action that's represented within this set of nouns and verbs, which are represented like a graph. So you typically have the nouns as entities or nodes, typically in graph nomenclature, and then your relationships are the verbs, right? So the actions that take place. Why ontologies are also very interesting is because they provide a very flexible type of data structure. So you can add to them and remove to them and modify these data structures in production quite easily. And on top of that, it provides us with a framework to be able to actually extend that data modeling principle, which, as I said earlier, typically was really constrained to the world of systems of record and structured data. It allows you to extend it to unstructured data. Now, why is that important? 80% of all data that exists in an enterprise setting is unstructured, right? So if you think of traditional data modeling, like a medallion architecture, star schema, whatever you want to take it, that's typically only the upper bound is about 20% of all of the data that exists in an enterprise. Whereas now we've unlocked and have been able to structure and extract structure out of the rest of all of this unstructured data that exists in the form of Excel files and PDFs and PowerPoint presentations. And as I said, meeting transcripts. I mean, assembly can generalize to video feeds. If we can transcribe the video feeds and we can get logs, and we're doing some interesting work with this in terms of vision language models where we transcribe the actions and the events that are happening and actually turning that into an event stream, you can do some very, very interesting things. So it's an unlock from that perspective. And then really what an ontology ultimately tries to do is it tries to abstract the underlying data from the meaning that the data actually provides. So it's almost like a layer that sits on top of your physical data model that allows almost AI to interpret and speak to before it touches any of the physical data. to effectively use it as a map and compass of your business, right? And yeah, it obviously extends cross domain. So does all of the things that we've traditionally done on the structured side, but gives you a couple more tools in the toolkit to be able to do some slightly smarter things from an automation perspective. One final point is, ontologies are interesting, and the graph data structure is also quite interesting, because inherently, and if anyone's been following what's happened with like Claude Code, and again, most of the engineers that are listening to this podcast would definitely, from December, with the launch of Claude Code, and especially Opus 4.6 or 4.5, 4.6, there's been this principle of harness engineering. Now, harness engineering is basically a form of creating an environment within which agents can operate. Now, I'll touch on that in a bit, but if anyone has unpacked the actual design pattern of how Claude Code works, they'll understand that there's obviously a folder directory that it's given access to. You won't feed that full folder directory and all of the files and folders that exist, and the assets that exist in the code base into the model up front. What you'll do is you'll basically give it a map, i.e. that folder directory, and you'll say to it, here's where all of the different files are, you go and explore. So the idea is that you'll specify what you need it to do, and then it will do something called, it does something called progressive disclosure. So progressive disclosure basically means that the LLM will progressively discover things about the code base or the environment or the business context, which assembly sort of inherently allows you to do, without needing to have all of that context brought up front. And if it realizes it doesn't have enough context, it can go back and continue searching and effectively traversing the map, so to speak. If anyone played World of Warcraft as a kid, it's like when you had the map and like there was mist, and wherever you'd walk through, it would like uncover the mist. So that's sort of how I think about it.
So Nick, let me just ask you a question there, because this is, we're taking a bet the company on this approach. So this is the complete, future of Pygio, and I think we're going to be very aggressive on this. I think, assembly is the missing middle for AI. And one of the main concerns I had was, given that the model capability, and specifically LLMs, large language model capability, is only going to get better. Context window is going to get bigger. Inference is going to get a lot better. You've got NVIDIA that just bought Grok, G-R-O-Q, to do distributed inference. One of the questions I asked the team when building this out is, if we extrapolate the performance of these models 5 years down the line and expect 100 or 1,000x improvement at inference, why would you still need assembly? Why does the context graph matter? If a model is so much more capable at reading into memory, why does that memory layer still remain relevant?
It's a very, very good question. The current set of research is that obviously context layers are increasing, and you're seeing now with the likes of Gemini and Claude, they're pushing the 1 million, 2 million token context window length. I think, when you look at the specific environment that we operate in, it's typically enterprise, and governance, risk, and compliance is a very important factor. And sort of explainability and reproducibility of these systems is very, very important. So if you look at, again, going back to one of the key aspects that we've spoken about, which is unstructured data, LLMs are a massive unlock when it comes to unstructured data reasoning. You can throw in a PDF or an Excel spreadsheet, and out of the box, it can obviously reason about it, right? But in order to rely on it doing that same task at inference every single time, because LLMs are inherently stochastic systems, if you run an agent, call it 100 times over a particular task with the exact same context, with the exact same instructions, typically you will get, a large portion of the interpretation, or at least the extraction of the information, and especially as you scale. up, these systems and the amounts of files that need to increase. So case in point, I think Google DeepMind just published a paper where they basically said that vector search actually breaks down after a set number of dimensions. So after a particular amount of scale, vector search actually becomes indiscriminate. So the information that it's busy retrieving, as an example, it actually physically just starts to hallucinate, right? So what assembly tries to do is it tries to provide a lot more determinism and structure to your unstructured data sets. And again, to things like as unstructured as, Slack messages, Teams messages, email threads, to do a lot of the data cleaning up front. So what assembly effectively does is in the unification process with an ontology, another aspect as to why ontologies are very important, and you're not doing all of the heavy lifting at the point of inference or every time you query the model, is that an ontology will do something or allows for something very interesting and crucial for a lot of our workloads, which is entity resolution, right? So if you go back to the original point that I raised, you've got a CRM, an ERP, and call it like an accounting or finance system, right? You would have, or maybe not an accounting system, a Slack channel. I would be represented 3 different ways with potentially different names in different contexts across these 3 different systems. In order to get the LLM to do that with hundreds or if not thousands or hundreds of thousands of entities at inference time, in an unproven context layer, which typically also degrades the longer you actually do, or rather the more context you put in, these LLMs, the performance, the needle in the haystack problem actually does start to break down. You'll start to see a breakdown in performance of these models. So what assembly does is it connects that common meaning through the ontology upfront. It does a lot of that heavy lifting, and it will get basically many runs or many LLM calls effectively, because we use agents under the hood to do a lot of this resolution in terms of fuzzy matching and LLM validation to actually run.
Give me an example of that. What does that actually look like, the entity resolution? Because I think that's important.
Absolutely. So, take our business as an example. We've deployed assembly on our internal knowledge base. So we've connected our project delivery system, our CRM, our Google Drive with all of our customer contracts, just take those 3 as an example. One of our clients, as an example, will come up as in a contract, the actual client name. They will also come up in Prometric, and then they'll also come up in the CRM. So the sales team have obviously uploaded them as a lead. The name might be Joe Soap Vendor 123, right, with a contact of Tom, right? Then when the contract gets signed, it's a different signatory under their full business name, and then obviously within your within your project delivery CRM or that system, the name also looks completely different, right? So we will do a lot of clever statistical tricks on the back end to basically connect these 3 and resolve them and basically give meaning and say they're all actually referring to the same person. So when an LLM queries that single customer, it links to all 3 of the different systems, and it can pull context from each of those different systems. And you don't have to rely on pretty much hoping an LLM will do that at inference time.
Yeah, that makes sense. My question now, Nick, and probably everyone that's listening is saying, like, so what? What is the point? How do I actually apply this to my business? Who's going to use it? What is the day-to-day use that I'm going to get out of assembly? What is the physical instantiation? Are we talking about just a graph database that gets deployed that can then be linked to your systems of action and record? Maybe just speak to some of the actual use cases that we're building out. Finance, procure to pay, supply chain resilience. Supply chain being... Well,
Why don't you cover them?
Well, yeah, sure. I'm happy to cover them. I think this is where I spend most of my time thinking is the so what? What does this mean for our customers? The thesis and the realization we had last 2 years ago was that most companies spend 50% of their cost base on human labor and human capital. And what AI is effectively tackling directly is that cost base. It's not tackling the traditional SaaS spend. Everyone's worried about traditional SaaS being displaced. Traditional SaaS is like a tool. It's, as Jensen says, that's the hammer. AI is not going to come and reinvent the hammer. But what AI or LLMs is directly displacing, and not displacing, but augmenting, is the human knowledge worker. So the way we think about this is, it is not going to replace your billing system. It is going to replace the PwCs. It's going to replace the EYs, the KPMGs of the world that are applying human analysts, auditors. Specifically, let's take an accounting or an audit function, advisory. AI is going to start to eat away at these people's lunch, these companies' lunch, in a big way. So the way we go about thinking of the use for assembly is to say, given that you now have this complete contextual graph of your business, you don't need as many people to come in and interview folks, interview your finance team, interview your ops team, understand with what was sold. Let's take the lead to cash situation. Understand what was sold, do a recon on that, go and check your P&L, make sure that the P&L is reconned. You don't need a human being to do that. Now you can achieve this just by asking your instance of assembly. So for me, the use cases will be wherever you think there's an outside consultancy that's helping you with a particular business function. By the way, this could be for engineering and software development as well. But if you think there's, where you see an external consultant coming to assist you with a particular line of business, for example, auditors, legal functions, contractors that come in to assist on operations, they can be significantly enhanced. That human labor that comes in to assist you can be significantly enhanced using the context layer that we're building. And the way we think about commercializing this ultimately will be quite aggressive to say, you are going to spend over the next, so a billing system will cost you $1,000 a month or whatever for a mid-sized company. But that same company will spend $100,000 a month on professional services from PwC, KPMG, and EY. And we're saying that with deploying assembly, you will be able to actually go out and build a use case that actually tackles the same work that a PwC would do in audit or financial advisory or actuarial reserving. So as opposed to displacing that SaaS provider, we're saying this should be replacing the external consultants that come in to help you with those tasks. Now, obviously, you're not going to ever get away from PwC. I'm not going after PwC here, but I've mentioned them a lot. Maybe I've
get response.
They rejected me from my first job, so maybe I've got to be in my bonnet. But you will never get away from external audits. But I think those companies also have an amazing opportunity to adopt these technologies and be, and they definitely are, right? So these the big four, all thinking about and building their own AI augmented services. So how do they apply and build? And if they're not, certainly we are. How do you apply and build an agentic audit function that reduces the cost to your client and the time to serve from that $100,000 a bill month a bill to $10,000 a month, and tackle it using humans augmented by AI. And that's really what the basis of assembly is now going after. We're now spending all of our resources and time going after and understanding what are the functions of a business. As Jeff Bezos says, like focus on what makes your beer taste better, and outsource the rest. Those outsourced functions are massive, massive multi-trillion-dollar industries that have been built off human labor. And we're looking at that and saying, right, where do we see assembly being applied? What are the use cases we can train assembly to achieve, to then go and replicate those functions and apply that to a customer in a 24/7, always on support function. You don't need to have analysts and consultants come in that need toilet breaks, that they need to eat. You'll have a continuous service. So the industries we're thinking, it's definitely going to be finance. It's going to be audit, sales, outsource sales. So SDR, you think of it, a lot of companies outsource their sales development reps. Legal is a massive one, and we're already seeing these kind of point solutions in, AI point solutions like the likes of a Harvey, the same with Maximo on the audit side. So this is going to be the go-to market for us, is going to say, where are you applying a lot of resources with your consultants? Let us assist you in reducing that bill, take back control, such that the ROI calculation for you makes a lot of sense to in-house this. That's how we're thinking about it. Yeah, just to end that thought, I mean, how would someone buy from us? I mean, the way we think of it is that if you're, spending $100,000 a month with a consultant, you can achieve the same, if not better, results at a 90% cost reduction. So apply Assembly. Let us assist you in building out that context graph for your business. And we remove the need for continuous interviews where external people are coming into your business and then going back to their offices, creating these reports, and then sending them back to you. You can just get that generated from your instance of Assembly.
I'll add to that as well, because you asked a little bit more about the so what and where the product is going. I think if you go back to where I started off with, which is the traditional data modeling approach, your data engineers will typically look at a business or a particular domain within the business and say, what is the universe of all questions that could possibly be asked? And let us parameterize the data model to be able to answer all of those questions, right? So to be able to generate any kind of reports or aggregate any kind of metric that would be needed by that particular domain. The way that we think about Assembly is it changes your business, or at least the data layer of your business, that abstraction layer, from providing you with a system of understanding, which is what traditional analytics systems do, and they help you do. Assembly extends that. But our ultimate ambition of Assembly and what we're trying to do is extend the system of understanding into a system of action, right? So I think one final point on why ontologies are super exciting is because of the kind of relational structures, the typed relational structures. So being explicit about the kinds of actions that take place. So instead of saying what kind of questions could be asked within this domain, you flip that on its head and say, what are the workflows that could potentially be required within this domain? And you'll effectively bake that into the underlying data model so that AI can self-discover a lot of those workflows by itself. So using the same principle of progressive disclosure, all you need to effectively do, and this is the vision for the product, is specify an outcome and let an agent effectively build up the workflow for you from scratch, from the ground up. Basically exactly the same way as what Claude Code would do, where it will go and do some folder directory searches. It'll try and understand what exists in certain files. It may do a Google search. It's got access to a whole lot of tools. And the added benefit of what we've built, or in the process of building with Assembly, is that all of the reasoning traces and the decision logic that an agent would actually make within the context of a particular workflow that you build on top of Assembly. So Assembly is basically the operating system. It's a horizontal platform. You would need to build applications on top of it, but we'd specify the universe of applications that you could potentially build upfront and bake that into the ontology, such that at a later stage, all a person needs to do is effectively ask a question and say, this is what I need to get done. And it'll auto-configure tools, auto-configure skills, and then it'll go and discover the context itself and understand the kinds of actions that it can take through understanding the ontology. We think that that's super, super exciting. And building on that, and maybe finishing the points, is that all of the decisions and the tool calls and the functions that it generates get actually restored back into that operating system, into that memory layer, into the context layer, to say an agent executed this workflow. The first 3 times it had to ask a human being for approval to say, is this the correct way I need to execute this? Are you happy with this final outcome? The human being approved it the last 3 times. The agent will actually go and read the precedence of what happened those last 3 times over the last 3 executions and say, I can reasonably infer that I'm happy with this, and it'll basically self-execute the workflow. So that's where we're seeing these models go. Obviously, guardrails are a super important aspect, but we've built use cases and applications out of the box for a lot of our customers in the finance space, in the HR space, in the legal space, contract management, doing a lot of call it risk management from a document perspective, a legal document perspective. That's super exciting for us. Automating a lot of the grunt work that lawyers would have to do typically. And then, what we're finding is also a very exciting artifact is connecting coding agents to the ontology and this context graph. So you can ask it a question, and out of the box, it will retrieve the context, it will retrieve all of the workflow, the actions that could potentially be taken, and will self-create all of the application actions, so that the tooling that would go into a dashboard, as an example. So I think that the flexibility of the platform.
So you could even, sorry, I'm just thinking about that. So we can even apply this to an outsourced software dev, to replace an outsourced software dev company. So instead of having an external product owner coming in and a team of software engineers, you could have just deploy assembly and then ask it to develop the features and products that you want. And because it has the richest version of knowledge in your business, it will act as a fully self-managed development platform that replaces what traditional software dev houses would actually be able to do. That's another domain. In saying that, we're basically eating our own lunch and cannibalizing our own business, because the pedigree and the DNA of Pygio was always kind of, and has been, selling a unit of time. But we've completely understood that model has to be disrupted. Someone is disrupting it. And if we don't do it to ourselves, we are going to be disrupted by someone that's doing it. And I think that's, Nic, to your credit, what you've done is looked at it not from the perspective of going to a particular domain as audit or legal, as an example. You've approached it from a first principles, like let's get a digital brain for your entire company, and then building out those arms, I suppose, those business units in an automated way becomes so much easier. So we've gone full stack from first principles, building out assembly, but then also going in and attacking the application layer and the human workforce layer. Nic, we can talk about this the whole day, but it just in kind of to wrap it up, why don't we need to create like a little bit of excitement around this, and I think we'd be keen to hear the audiences, whoever's listening. We've got 6 listeners. I think my mom is one of them. But whoever's listening, whoever's made it this far, we should create almost like a demo day. And I think part of the follow-ups would be, from this session would be to create a demo day and actually invite companies that we're speaking to, or any of the listeners who are interested in AI, even grads, students, other engineers that are keen to work on this with us. We should do a demo day.
Absolutely. We've done it with a couple of the universities, but I think we need to formalize something.
Nic, I'll leave it at that, and we'll wrap up for today. It's been really good to chat. Been really good to chat to you. And next, sorry. And producer Tom. Producer Tom's in the background. I think he's starving. He's keen to go get lunch. But we're going to make this. We're going to start including other stakeholders and interesting people in the next couple of episodes. So it's not going to just be you and me rambling on forever, because I'm not sure everyone wants to listen to that. But yeah, we'll start to add people of interest to this podcast, and keep exploring, keep playing and tinkering.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dimitri. Thank you, producer Tom.
Good to chat to you, Nick.